Welcome to TGS, Transform, Grow, Succeed, a podcast focused on helping you break down your organization's communication barriers to uncover, discover, and recover the values that guide your work. I'm your host, Tim Gravoy, and my goal is to uncover all of the innovative ways that you can drive meaningful change in your organization and also provide insights on how to implement them starting today. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Chandra Sledge Mathias to our listeners. Chandra is the Senior Director of Partner Support at Fulcrum Education Solutions, an education consulting group that provides high quality, consistent, customized coaching across the entire school year. Also, Chandra is the host of Wouldn't It Be Cool If? Chandra's show is about Chandra getting her guests to share their journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they answer the question, wouldn't it be cool if, and then go make cool stuff happen. Dr. Sledge Mathias, did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
Fantastic. Chandra, we've known each other for over 15 years, collaborating and conversing about education throughout that time. And I'm excited to have you on the show. I've asked you on the show because both of us are passionate about quality professional learning for educators, especially for principals. And today's show, however, is kind of about bad professional learning for principals. So I'm hoping we can have some fun exploring how most school principals typically experience professional learning, and then maybe we can wave us some magic wands and fix it forever, or at least do it on the show. Does that sound fun?
That sounds fun. Let's do it.
All right, fantastic. Chandra, you've brought with you a list of things that principals commonly experience that is really kind of wrong about PD, professional learning for principals. Tell me about the list.
Oh my gosh. I had to narrow it down to three because
just three. We can only do three.
There's a whole list of things, but I would say the top issues that I see with professional development, and that's like both in being a former principal and enduring these PDs and also enduring. Yeah, that's to put it nicely. And also as a leader or facilitator of professional development now, these are things that I'm thinking about as I'm planning. So I would steer clear of irrelevant and arbitrary professional development offerings, these kind of blanket approaches without consideration for nuances of schools.
We're all going to learn how to cook a mushroom
soup today. Yes, here it is. This is the magic bullet.
No one's telling us why we're doing it, but we all got to do it right now, even though we don't need to know mushroom souffles, but we're all going to learn how.
Right. We're going to learn it because someone decided that's what we need to learn.
Okay.
The next one is PDs that don't allow time for workshopping, experimentation, trying out whatever the content is. I think those PD sessions are missing a great opportunity for adult learning, that productive struggle that we like students to go through. Completely forget about it when we're planning for adults.
Isn't that amazing that there isn't enough time to actually do the thing that we've just learned to do? But as principals, we would never accept that in a classroom where if a teacher was teaching that in a classroom. But it's so common. Okay, I love it.
And
all right.
The last big one is PDs that say this is what you need to do, but don't really talk about how to do it. So leaders are kind of left with, okay, that sounds great. How do we make that happen in real life? And there's no conversation about that. It's like, do this, go on your merry way.
Yeah, because I have a bell schedule. I don't have 27 teaching assistants, or what am I supposed to do if there's
or my budget is $5.65. So how do I pay for it? All of the things.
Yeah, all the things that it's just beautiful. I would love to. So kind of training someone to do something that even if it were great, it's just okay. And how are we supposed to do that? Okay. Yeah. How does it actually happen? Chandra, I absolutely love it. And I knew I could count on you to be bold because boldness is what we need if we're going to elevate the quality of professional learning for all educators, but especially for principals. And I'm wondering if you might tell me a bit more about that first part about your list, like professional learning for principals, such as irrelevant and arbitrary. Can you give us an example of maybe when you've seen this happen?
I see it all the time. So in my work now, I coach
all the time.
And I see it especially in work with districts where, and again, I experienced this as a principal and I still see it in my coaching of principals, but there are these mandates or these directives that come and it's a blanket approach, and leaders are given professional development. They're kind of given, a set direction that may not actually be what their school needs. It may not be relevant. And it just doesn't allow for consideration of the nuances of schools. So I am a huge fan of customized professional development. If you're planning it, spend some time trying, we often give the participants pre-work, but as a professional development designer, that's our pre-work. Spend some time talking to leaders, investigating, you're going to participate in this session. What are the needs of your school? And then designing the professional development around that versus here's a one size fits all approach, which is a disaster every time. And it just leaves leaders frustrated. We don't need to add to the frustration right now in this glorious pandemic world. We need to try to take away some of the frustration. So the one size fits all blanket approach is just it's not beneficial.
Yeah. So it's the kind of that experience of, okay, we all have to do this new thing with math, or we're all going to do professional learning communities. Yeah. It's all going to look exactly a certain way. And, I'm sure it's just like it here where I'm at in Tucson, where you're at in Chicago. A school a few blocks from another school might not be the same school in terms of what students need and what teachers need to meet those needs, and what a principal is going to need to be equipped to do. And so it sounds like that actually kind of goes into this next question.
It does.
Such a pervasive, practice. Let's wave this wand a bit, because I think you started talking about, if we really wave a magic wand and fix, principals from ever having to go to PD that was just irrelevant and just decided by somebody miles away from them, what do you think the solution would be instead? I
think the solution is to, if you're in a position where you're designing professional development, actually take the approach that many classroom teachers take. We always talk about differentiated instruction and meeting your students where they are and learning their needs, but we need to do the same thing at the leadership level. So the magic wand would have those of us who are leading the professional developments to actually get to know the needs of the individuals in the, whoever the participants are. What are their specific school needs? What are the challenges that they're grappling with? And then tailoring the development offerings to those challenges so that you're actually seeing a pathway forward. Like you're helping them figure out, how do I grow through this scenario that I'm dealing with?
Yeah. So it may be that, yes, everybody needs to kind of learn about a thing because it's part of what our district is about, and we're all part of the same team, and that's important. But just like as a classroom teacher will, we're going to get our arms around a wide range of learners and a wide range of readiness for reasons that may or may not have anything to do with the individual principal, but have everything to do with just what the school is ready for. And it sounds like you're saying all of that needs to happen before you actually plan the learning.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so tell me then, why is it so common that you could just go on a lot of people's websites and just click and put the PD in the cart and purchase it, and now your whole district has to do it? Why do you think that's such a common approach?
It's easy.
It's easy.
It's easy to do that. It's so much easier just to plan the blanket offering, and we use these tag words like these are best practices, and they are. It's not to take away from practices that are effective, but schools are so nuanced. Communities have such specific issues, and we have an opportunity to really drill down. Like even if we're going to focus on small group instruction, great, but what does that look like for this specific leader with this specific community? So, taking time to design a PD session that allows that leader to explore in their context, how do I do this?
Yeah. And there are actually schools, and probably a few schools in Chicago, but definitely here in Tucson, where the whole school might kind of be a small group. I might,
Mhm.
and yet they still might end up at the same PD about small group instruction, and really thinking that through,
Right.
like, okay, well, what does that mean for them? You're not going to know that. And I just think it's funny because it sounds like you also make a lot of effort to do that pre-work. But very often when I
Mhm.
first meet a district leader who wants to do something really big and important and good for kids, they often will ask me, okay, well, what's the scope and sequence of the learning going to be? And I say, I will absolutely share that with you once I've had a chance to speak with your principals and get to know your school as a vet.
Yeah.
And that's often a very surprising answer. But the schools that I work with that do that, we just have a lot more fun, and the results kind of stick. And
And
it's
they own
yeah,
it because
they
their
own it.
voice is visible. Like they see this, their identity is tied to the learning. So this learning connects to what I'm actually experiencing on a day-to-day basis versus this is something that someone said is a good idea for us to learn because a school in California is doing it. So we're going
Yes.
to do it now. Or,
Oh my goodness, it is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. All right, so everyone, join us after the break, where we're going to continue on our discussion of just ineffective professional learning practices that need to end. And we're going to be having this conversation again with Dr. Chandra Sledge Mathias, who's just an amazing professional learning facilitator, and just great educational leader in her own right. So we'll be back in just a minute. All right, everyone, welcome back from the break. I'm here with Dr. Chandra Sledge Mathias, again, just talking about ineffective professional learning practices that seem to be pervasive everywhere, but we're going to end them today with our magic wands. We talked about irrelevant and arbitrary PD and how we're going to fix it by doing the most revolutionary practice of all, talking to the people that the PD is about. We're going to do that first, and then we'll design the PD. And it's a lot harder than just clicking and putting PD in the cart and making everybody do it, but it's definitely going to be much more effective in the end. All right, so we've got another one I'm really excited to talk about. This is the second on the list. Many people might not understand why that second item on your list, not enough time to practice what we've been taught to do, happens, especially when it's the people like designing the PD are kind of in charge at the time. What is it that principals need time to do when they're engaging with new professional learning? And why is it that that time just isn't built in?
We need time, and I'm saying we because I'm a lifelong learner as well and still attend PDs. We need time as participants to actually practice and to start to experiment with the learning. So I have sat through, I can't even tell you how many times I've sat through a session, and it may actually be a great session. The information that's shared may really be helpful, but there's no time for me to start to process that, to work with it, to plan for how might this look in my setting. And while I have a facilitator or an expert right here, I don't have time to begin to work through this either individually or with my team members who are there. It would be so great if, as a professional development offering, time is built in for leaders to go through that productive struggle, just like we would expect of students in the classroom, and actually start playing with, I like, to think of it like a sandbox, like start playing with these ideas and mapping out what this would look like in my school. What are the challenges? Like, what are the roadblocks or the barriers that might come up? Because what happens is when we leave sessions and we don't have time to really start to explore the options or to experiment or plan out or workshop, whatever term you want to use, we leave. And once that momentum leaves or decreases, we forget about it. And then it's like, oh, wait, what? Oh yeah, we went to that session back in October. Yeah, that was good. What did you do with the learning? Nothing. But if we have time to actually grapple with it during the session while the expert is right there, we're going to be more likely to bring a plan back to our schools and start talking about implementation, and less likely to let that, to drop the ball on it or let it fall through the cracks.
So whatever it is that we're expecting school leaders to learn about, and this applies to all educators, but just with this particular focus of being professional learning for school leaders and principals, If we're going to expect, say, you're going to hang out with me for 90 minutes, or we're going to be working together even all day for an all day session, it could be the best thing in the world. But if there isn't actually time to build the thing that we're learning about, or to actually imagine it happening in real life, or practicing the words I'm going to say in front of my staff when I explain that we're going to be doing this new thing that they're not ready for, then it sure is easy to just turn on the radio at the end of the day and just watch it all just kind of go. And we kind of know this first from being instructors too. If we just we can have the best lesson in the world, but if students don't actually do the thing we're teaching them, it tends not to stick. So that's really all right. So let's wait. Let's get our magic wands out again, and we'll just kind of like end this practice forever of there not being time to practice the thing that we need to do. What do our magic wands conjure up instead?
Our magic wands are banishing the sit and get PD. Like we're not doing sit and get anymore. We're doing interactive, exploratory, experimental learning experiences for adults. So we're going to share some information. We're going to allow folks to start to play with this information and think about how they can make this come alive in their schools. And we're going to give them a chance to collaborate with one another, talk to the leader across the room, talk to the school that might have a similar context as yours, talk to a school that's doing something completely innovative that you haven't seen before, get ideas. We want people, again, to talk to each other and to begin to craft their path forward. Like think about how implementation might look in their context.
So they say for folks who might not know kind of the sit and get model, one of the metaphors that I try to banish is like the metaphor of the folding metal chair in a cafeteria, where we're all just we just go in there and we sit on the metal chair in the cafeteria and we just kind of like look at a person who might even be entertaining. I mean, it's possible that they're even really fun to listen to, right? But often not, very often not. And we're just kind of there, and we just sit and we just get whatever wisdom they got. But you're describing the complete opposite of that, where the wisdom is in, there might be stuff I don't know yet because I've never heard it before, but the wisdom is in, it sounds like you're saying the wisdom is like how to apply it. And that only happens by wrestling with it. And the best time to do it is like right then, right then in the PD. That's one of the things too, where I always try very hard as a facilitator to make sure that it's easy, I think, to overestimate, how much you can really teach is something new to adults who have to do it in real life, and that's kind of like pacing it right so that there is that time to make it stick is just really important. I just appreciate that so much.
And I think the assumption is that leaders have so much time to figure that piece out once they get to their buildings.
Really?
And we don't, like, it's like
so much time. Like, wow.
Right.
That's why
I think fall through the cracks too, because we don't have protected time to do that. So let's do that in these sessions, give folks a chance to connect with one another. And they will be more likely to keep the work going once they get to their buildings, coming in with a plan versus let me figure this out once I'm back in my building and the phones are ringing and I have 8,000 emails and parents are calling and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So, and then there's 5 teachers who say it's never going to work and isn't working right now. And all that stuff. Right. And I think one of the most valuable things that many of the clients that I work with just really appreciate and I have a hunch appreciate about like the coaching work that you do. It's just that every week we're going to sit and figure it out for an hour and a half, that there's just that protected time that the rest of the staff knows that the emails will happen at minute 91, but not until this 90 minutes is done, because that seems for exactly that reason.
Protected time is huge.
It's huge. To do the thing. And it's worth it. If you're a central office person who wants the thing to happen, you've got to protect that time for your principals because they don't have magic time. I think that's just brilliant. And I just appreciate that. Well, so here's this one that I just think is going to be a lot of fun. And I was really hoping that somebody would bring this up. So Chandra, I'm telling you, I've always wanted someone to kind of spill the tea a bit on problem number 3. And problem number 3 is being that professional learning for principals is all about what to do, but rarely about how to do it. And I'm wondering if you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by this, and then also why you think that is.
Yeah, I think back to my experience as a principal and just, sitting in professional development, having someone say, we need you to do this, and it's like, I'm looking around the room at other principals and we're all like, okay, yeah, that sounds great on paper. How do we make that happen in real life? And that's never part of the conversation. It's just like, we're going to present this information. This is a mandate. This is an expectation. This is an initiative that we have. But the how part is typically missing, or either the how is so surface level that it's not really helpful. So I think why it happens is because it is very easy to say what needs to happen, and it is extremely difficult to figure out how this is going to play out in real life, and how you're going to plan for implementation with everything else that's going on, all the considerations that leaders have to make every minute of the day, how you're going to be consistent with the implementation and monitor progress and all of that. That's not easy. It's a very heavy lift. So I think that's why it doesn't happen largely. But if we could shift our practices in facilitating professional development, where we are allowing time, all 3 of these no things or awful practices connect with one another, but the how comes in the productive struggle and in the collaboration and in the figuring it out. And all of that also includes the talking to each other and learning the actual needs of the school. So they all 3 connect and feed into each other. But yeah, the how piece is huge. And it's really what leaders need to spend time figuring out in these sessions.
And I almost wonder too, where if sometimes it might be difficult, depending on your organization, if you're the principal of the school and you're in a room with your fellow principals and you have somebody at the central office level who's telling you that there's this thing and teaching you what it is. I'm just imagining something. It might be hard to raise your hand and say, I'm not sure how to do that.
Oh my gosh, it's huge. It's huge. And depending on the culture of the districts, depending on is it a culture where it's safe for leaders to be vulnerable? Like a lot of times there's an assumption that you're the principal, so this. We don't need to spend time talking about the how, because you will figure that out. That's why you're in this seat. Or we don't need to spend time protecting time for productive struggle, because you got this already. That's why you get paid the big bucks. But it's like, no one has this all figured out. Like we're all learning all the time. Schools are constantly changing the environment. Like, hello, none of us have led through a pandemic prior to 2020. Like we're all figuring out new information all the time. And we are constantly adjusting. We're constantly like going through the process of analyzing information and making shifts. So it's okay to say, I don't know. It should be okay to say, I don't know. And I challenge anyone who's listening, if your school community or your district or your network, whatever your lingo is not a safe space for leaders to be vulnerable and say where they need support as an instructional leader, to start to shift that culture. Like we got to do better.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of those pervasive assumptions too, where if I'm designing PD, and I know this at this point in my career and doing this, and I know that you do because I know you and just know what your values as an educator. But if I got somebody who's telling me, like, if I'm feeling resistance somehow to the thing, whatever it is that we're learning to do, like, positive behavior intervention supports is a common thing I do. Trauma-informed practice happens a lot. There's coaching sessions that you do a ton. Like when I start to sense that resistance is happening, it's almost never because the educator just doesn't want to, or just doesn't care about kids. Like, or, it's like, if they knew how to do it, it would happen, but maybe the budget's $5.65, and what you are asking for literally in the handbook says it requires personnel. That's happened often, in trainings that I've gone through anyway. So I think that's really powerful. Okay, so I'm wondering if this kind of goes back to, and I'm surprised, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that this theme is, what would the best way be if I'm a person who designs professional learning for a living, you do as well, and I want to make sure that I can explain the how, but I don't necessarily work at that person's school. What would I have to do to be able to support that leader in the how?
We got to go back to number one. We have to talk to people.
We got to talk to the leaders.
Yes, we have to do our pre-work.
Yes.
We have to diagnose, for lack of a better word, what are the issues in this school, and what are the practices that we can leverage to move us forward. So all of that, again, like talking to folks, the productive struggle, all of that leads to the how, and that doesn't happen in isolation. It shouldn't be something that a professional development facilitator is telling you to do. It should be something that is co-created by the leader, by the teachers, or whoever else is on the team, with that facilitator as a coach, as a resource, as a guide, as a connector. One of the things that I do love about my job now is I'm seeing so many schools, and no school is perfect. No leader has it figured out. Like, everyone's working on something, but there are pockets of success and there are these bright spots. And what I'm able to do is share that with leaders and connect each other. So, as a facilitator, it's great to say, oh, I know you're struggling with your budget. You don't know how you're going to figure it out. Let me connect you with this leader here who's in a similar situation. Let's hear some ideas from this person that might work for you, and that sort of thing. So I think like the ideal professional development is one that just continues that cycle of the communication with the leaders that happens before the session is designing that session that is tailored for that leader, and allowing the leader to kind of work through this learning and figure out like, how am I going to make this come to life in my building, and then getting those connections for the follow through.
So that off the rack design.
I hope I answered your question.
No, that's perfect. No, that's exactly it. Just that off the rack learning, or the off the rack learning just isn't going to work, because it might fit one person in the world. It might fit one person in the world. Which means like
for designers, we have to design our sessions differently, because that won't work if we're offering a session to 50 schools. And, we'll have to be thoughtful as professional development designers in how our sessions need to be, the logistics of it. How do we set up the sessions to have the time to do this type of setting? Otherwise, we just fall back into the practice of the blanket one size fits all. And we don't want to do that anymore.
Well, Chandra, I'm just grateful. I just think that I love exploring kind of the non-examples, because it tends to shine such a powerful light on what the obvious solutions are. And I believe you. I believe really the obvious solution that you're sharing of talk to the people that this PD is for ahead of time. If you're designing a session for someone, get to know them first. Yeah, it isn't. It just isn't. And it just can't happen if you're purchasing PD on a website. There's got to be something else that happens before if it's going to stick. Chandra, thank you so much for being with us today. And Chandra, before we go, is there anything you'd like to share with our audience today about any projects you're working on, anything your podcast maybe?
Oh, sure. I'll plug Fulcrum first, the company that I work for, and I'm plugging them because it's what I talked about today is how we approach our work. And I'm grateful to work and a place where, the approach is aligned to my values and how I think the work should be done and what's helpful for school leaders. So I would give a shout out to Fulcrum Education Solutions. And then my podcast is called Wouldn't It Be Cool If? And I'm talking to cool people who are doing cool things and just learning about their journeys, what lessons they've learned along the way. Tim is going to be joining me on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Soon.
I am so excited to be on the other end.
About that.
Oh, no,
It'll be a fun conversation. Yeah, but I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube. I'm out there. Just find me.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you'd like to know about Dr. Chandra Sledge Mathias's work, her contact info will be in the show notes. And if you'd like to know more about me, my contact info will be there as well. And after the break, Dr. Chandra Sledge Mathias and I will share our takeaways from our discussion today.
Yay.
All right, welcome back, everyone. At the end of every episode, I like to provide some of my own takeaways from the discussion and how you can apply it to your own day-to-day life as an educator. From today's conversation, I'm wondering, Dr. Chandra Sledge Mathias, would you please share with me what would be your one key takeaway if you were a person who's in charge of designing professional learning for principals?
It's going to be so mind-blowing. I would just say talk to people. Just talk to people. Talk to the leaders. Talk to your audience. If you can reach out to them ahead of time and just learn a little bit about what their challenges are, what they're grappling with, and use that as you are designing so that they're walking away from the session with practices that are really going to help them grow as leaders and also help their school communities flourish. I would just say, talk to people.
Oh my goodness. It's like, hey, I was over at Sarai school and Sarai is really struggling with this, this, and this. I was over at Tom's school and Tom's school is like this. And so they might approach this content a little differently. I'm just imagining how much of a difference that would make, even if I'm not Sarai or Tom, even if I'm not them. I know that this person knows something about us in a way.
Yeah.
This is just much more powerful. That's just.
And if you're leading professional development and you don't know the people, like you're leading for a district that you're not familiar with or a school you're not familiar with, if they're signing on for this professional learning, I hope that folks will be open. In my experience, they have been open with sharing, even if they might be like, who is this person reaching out to me? What do you want? Yeah. I'm busy, just some quick questions, like just to get that information that will help you plan. Yeah. And just framing it as, I want to know what you're really struggling with so that I can design this professional learning experience in a way that will help you with that particular challenge.
Yeah. That's absolutely beautiful. Ms. Chandra, thank you so much again for being with us today. And I'm just really excited for you to share a little bit about your work with us and just help elevate the quality of professional learning for principals and school leaders across our country. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I had fun.
Me too.
Now I got to go design a PD.
I know, right? Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to our show today. I hope you learned a thing or two. I would like to send my heartfelt thanks to our guests for their insightful conversation and important dialogue about this topic. If you have enjoyed our show, please share and give us a rating on the podcast platform you're listening to us on. For more information about me or about the show, please visit us online at https://tgseducationalconsulting.com. Until next time, this is Tim Gravoy wishing you continued transformation, growth, and success.